Hello students and welcome to today's lesson, Benares by Aldous Huxley. This is the second part of the lesson and it is being presented by Dr. P.V. Geeta Lakshmi Patnaik from BJR Government Degree College, Narayanguda, Hyderabad. So students, if you remember, we have already discussed the first part of the lesson in the previous class. So before we begin today's class, let us have a recap of the previous lesson. As you all know, Aldous Huxley was an English writer, novelist, and philosopher. He also wrote poetry, drama, film screenplays, and works of criticism. The present essay, Benares, was written in 1926 when Huxley had visited the holy city on a day when Hindus had come to the Ghats to ritually observe the solar eclipse. He uses the occasion to reflect on mankind's irrationality, as he is of the opinion that it is mankind's capacity for thought that has actually led to belief in superstitions. And he urges all Indians to come together and save the nation instead of wasting their energies on ritualistic gestures. I have here a slide for you students. This is just to show you the difference between the scientific explanation of a solar eclipse and the Hindu belief about the solar eclipse. So as you can see, this is the scientific explanation where the moon comes in between the sun and the earth, and the moon casts a shadow and it blocks the sun, and therefore for some time there is the eclipse of the sun. Whereas the Hindu belief about the solar eclipse is that the serpent or the demon Rahu swallows the sun for some time, and that is how we have a solar eclipse. And so Hindus believe that they have to pray during this time, and they have to fast, and they have to take a bath after the eclipse is over. So these two beliefs, or this explanation, the scientific explanation and the Hindu belief, are shown, presented by Aldous Huxley in a way which shows the irrationality of the Hindu belief about the solar eclipse. So moving on to the recap, the essay is divided into two parts. So Huxley tries to illustrate, or Huxley intends to illustrate his thesis through the examples that he gives in the essay. So the two parts are, the first part is the description of the behavior of the people on the Ghats, and the second part is the incident of the sacred bull during his visit to the town. So these two are the parts into which the essay is divided, but the basic idea is to provide examples of the central argument of the author. So in the description of the people, behavior of the people on the Ghats, there are three types of Ghats that he visits. The first type is where he visits the holiest and busiest bathing ghat and observes the various superstitions and ritualistic actions performed by the people. After that, he visits one of the less crowded ghats and sees a royal palanquin arrive with a princess. So the princess comes with her female companions, and she gets down from the palanquin and boards a barge, and she observes all the happenings on the ghats and the eclipse, and she follows all the ritualistic traditions that all the others are also following. And the implication is that everyone, rich and poor, are bound by the conventions and superstitions of religion. And then finally, he visits the burning ghats where corpses are described in a grotesque manner. So the scenes of the praying crowds and the burning dead bodies are actually juxtaposed to present the true picture of the river Ganga, because the river Ganga, the holiest and the most sacred river of the Hindus, is the place where all these events happen. So now let us continue the lesson, students. Let us move on to the next paragraph. In spite of the serpent, the sun was uncommonly hard on our backs, and after a couple of hours on the river, we decided that we had had enough and landed. The narrow lanes that lead from the ghats to the open streets in the center of the town were lined with beggars, more or less holy. They sat on the ground with their begging bowls before them. The charitable, as they passed, would throw a few grains of rice into each of the bowls. By the end of the day, the beggars might, with luck, have accumulated a square meal. So as you can see, you have the beggars lining the streets of Benares, and the lanes which lead from the ghats to the open streets are very narrow. And let us take a look at a few difficult words in this passage. Lined means covered, but here it means sitting in a line because all the lanes are covered by the beggars who sit in lines. Charitable means helpful or generous. Accumulated means collected, gathered. A square meal means a proper meal. In general, it means food. So there is this very sarcastic way in which the writer mentions this, in spite of the serpent. So this is a reference to the theory that the serpent is actually swallowing up the sun. But says the writer says that, it is very hot. The sun was uncommonly hard on our backs, he says, because the writer and his friends are actually rowing on the river. And so after a couple of hours, they decide that they have had enough because the sun is very harsh, the sun is very, very hot. And so they can no longer take the heat. And they decided that they would come and land and they would come into the town. The narrow lanes that lead from the ghats to the open streets in the center of the town were lined with beggars, more or less holy. So there are so many beggars here. And once again, there is this tinge of irony and sarcasm when he says that more or less holy. Some of them seemed holy, but the others were not holy. They were only, taking the easy way out by begging for their livelihood. So these beggars sat on the ground with their begging bowls before them. And a few charitable people, helpful or generous people, as they passed, would throw some grains of rice into each of the bowls. So by the end of the day, the writer says, with luck, the beggars might have gathered or collected enough grains for a square meal, for a proper meal. So this is the description of the beggars. So this is one part of, or one aspect of India, which Westerners or people from Western countries are very fond of showing, and that is the beggars in the streets. There is yet another important aspect that they would want to show, and that is the cows and bulls walking in the streets. And we will come to that in the next paragraph. But before that, let us just see what is there in the passage once again. The author moves from the river and enters the town. So there's a movement from the river to the town. And the streets of Benares with their rows of beggars are described in great detail. So the emphasis is on the image of the beggars, which is the image of India that is most preferred by the West. Okay, right. Now let us move on to the next passage. And as I mentioned, we have the mandatory cow or the bull in the street. So the writer, let us move on with the essay. We pushed our way slowly through the thronged alleys. From an archway in front of us emerged a sacred bull. The nearest beggar was dozing at his post. Those who eat little sleep much. The bull lowered its muzzle to the sleeping man's bowl, made a scouring movement with its black tongue, and a morning's charity had gone. The beggar still dozed. Thoughtfully chewing, the Hindu totem turned back the way it had come and disappeared. So we have the entrance of the bull, the sacred bull, and then the bull does something. What does it do? It eats up or it steals the food that the beggar had collected till then, and then it goes away. So here the role of the bull is over, but then this incident gives rise to the writer's reflections. So before we go into that, let us take a look at the difficult words. Alleys are lanes or passages. Archway is an entrance or passage which is formed by an arch. Emerged means appeared. Muzzle, in certain animals, the part of the head comprising the jaws and the nose are called the muzzle. And scouring means searching or hunting. Charity is the voluntary giving of help to those in need. Totem is a natural object or animal that is believed by a particular society to have spiritual significance and that is adopted by the society as an emblem. So here the bull is considered to be the totem, which is regarded as an emblem of in Hindu society. So Huxley says that as they push themselves slowly through the thronged alleys, the crowded alleys, what do they see? From an archway in front of us emerged a sacred bull, he says. So there is this sacred bull which actually roams around in the town. And so they see the bull. And what does the bull do? It goes to the nearest beggar who was actually dozing at his post. He was sleeping. He was feeling very sleepy in the hot sun and he must have just dozed off. And there's this comment where Huxley says, those who eat little sleep much. So there are a lot of these comments throughout the essay. And the bull lowered its muzzle to the sleeping man's bowl, made a scouring movement with its black tongue, and a morning's charity had gone. So he says that the bull has actually eaten up all that the beggar had managed to collect during the whole day. The beggar still dozed. The beggar was not aware that the bull had stolen his food. Thoughtfully chewing, the Hindu totem turned back the way it had come and disappeared. So the bull goes back, and Huxley uses this term, Hindu totem, to talk about the bull. So that is it. And the appearance of the sacred bull is described. So what are its actions? It approaches the sleeping beggar, it searches for food in his bowl, steals it, and leaves. So this description is actually meant to show how animals behave more sensibly than men, but it is also yet another way of showing the popular image of India with the beggars and the cattle in the streets. Right, the next paragraph. Being stupid and having no imagination, animals often behave far more sensibly than men. Efficiently and by instinct, they do the right or appropriate thing at the right moment. Eat when they are hungry, look for water when they are thirsty, make love in the mating season, rest and play when they have leisure. Men are intelligent and imaginative. They look backwards and ahead. They invent ingenious explanations for observed phenomena. They devise elaborate and roundabout means for the achievement of remote ends. Their intelligence, which has made them masters of the world, often causes them to act like imbeciles. So this is a picture of the thinking man by the famous artist Rodin. So let us look at a few difficult words. Efficiently means ably, competently, or well. Instinct, here it means nature or reflex. Ingenious means showing inventiveness and skill. Phenomena means event or incident. Elaborate means complicated or complex. Roundabout means indirect or winding. Remote is distant or far off. Imbecile is a stupid person. So, what is it that Huxley is saying? Huxley says that though animals are stupid and they have no imagination, sometimes or most often, he says, animals behave far more sensibly than men. And why do they do this? They do this because instinctively they do the appropriate thing at the right moment. They eat when they're hungry, look for water when they're thirsty, they rest and play when they have leisure, and they do things according to the moment. But men who are intelligent and imaginative, they invent very new and ingenious explanations for observed phenomena, he says. And this is a very indirect way of saying that the Hindus have this very ingenious way of explaining a solar eclipse by saying that it is a serpent Rahu swallowing up the sun. So this is an attack or a critique of the Indian or a Hindu belief of the solar eclipse. So he says that they devise elaborate and roundabout means for the achievement of remote ends. So they do all sorts of things. For example, they pray to the gods, they perform ritualistic gestures in order to achieve something somewhere far away, far off in their lives. So their intelligence, which has made them masters of the world, often causes them to act like imbeciles. This is a very, very damaging statement, students. So what does he say? Huxley says that it is their intelligence. Men are intelligent, and it is their intelligence which has made them masters of the world. But very sadly, it has often caused them to act like imbeciles, like stupid people, like idiots. So why does he say this? Because he's talking about the solar eclipse and he's using it as an example to talk about the other kinds of irrational behavior that man or men exhibit. So the contrast between animals and human beings is drawn. This is the first point here. Animals which are stupid and unimaginative behave more sensibly than men, he says. Whereas men who are both intelligent and imaginative often act like complete idiots. So this is the point that he's making in this particular passage. So moving on, he expands on this idea in his next paragraph. No animal, for example, is clever and imaginative enough to suppose that an eclipse is the work of a serpent devouring the sun. That is the sort of explanation that could occur only to the human mind. And only the human mind would dream of making ritual gestures in the hope of influencing, for his own benefit, the outside world. While the animal, obedient to its instinct, goes quietly about its business, man, being endowed with reason and imagination, wastes half his time and energy in doing things that are completely idiotic. In time, it is true, experience teaches him that magic formulas and ceremonial gestures do not give him what he wants. But until experience has taught him, and he takes a surprisingly long time to learn, man's behavior is in many respects far sillier than that of the animals. So, what does he say here, students? This is a very important passage because he is actually providing a very, very strong critique of the irrational behavior of human beings. And in this particular context, it is the irrational behavior of the Hindus. So, let us see what it is that he's saying. But before that, a look at the difficult words. Devouring means consuming or gobbling or eating fast, consuming something very fast. A ritual may be prescribed by the traditions of a community, including a religious community. Endowed means provided or supplied or equipped with. Reason is a reference to thought or logic. Formulas are methods or phrases. Ceremonial is, it means traditional or ritual. So after the previous passage, Huxley in this passage is actually reinforcing that idea that animals, even though they are stupid and unimaginative, are sometimes or most often more sensible than human beings. So let us see how he does it. He says that no animal, for example, and now he's come to the specific point that he's making, is clever and imaginative enough to suppose that an eclipse is the work of a serpent devouring the sun. No animal will ever come to this particular conclusion, he says. That is the sort of explanation that could occur only to the human mind. The human mind, which is endowed with reason and imagination, he says, is so gifted. However, the human mind is also prone to coming up with this kind of an explanation. So it is only the human mind which could come up with such an explanation, he says. And only the human mind would dream of making ritual gestures in the hope of influencing for his own benefit the outside world. So what does he do? He's trying to make some human mind will think of making some gestures like maybe breaking coconuts or maybe offering flowers or maybe offering other things in the hope that something good will happen to the outside world. And in a way, this is also for his own benefit. So this is a very, very sharp critique of the rituals that Hindus follow. So maybe it is not, welcome in some areas, or it is not welcome for most people. But then what Huxley says is, is meant to forward a theory which believes that reason and human beings have to adopt reason and use their imagination for the benefit of humanity, and not for wasting time and energy in useless gestures, ritualistic gestures. So it's only the human mind which would dream of making ritual gestures, he says. While the animal, once again, there is this contrast, while the animal, obedient to its instinct, as we have seen before in the previous paragraph, the animal is always responsive to its instincts, and so obedient to its instinct goes quietly about its business. It only does whatever it has to do. Whereas man, in spite of being endowed with reason and imagination, wastes half his time and energy in doing things that are completely idiotic, he says, which are of no use whatsoever. Of course, in time or over time, experience teaches man that all these gestures or formulas do not actually give him what he wants. But then, until he learns this, man's behavior is far sillier than that of the animals, says Huxley. So this paragraph is very important because it is here that his main thesis or main argument of the essay is presented. So as we can see, the contrast between animals and human beings is continued with the specific example of the solar eclipse. So he uses the solar eclipse, the occasion of the solar eclipse or the occurrence of the solar eclipse as the launch pad to present his central argument. And so he says, no animal would imagine that an eclipse is the work of a serpent devouring the sun. So here is Rahu. We have already seen this image in the previous class. So Rahu or the serpent devours the sun, and that leads to the solar eclipse is what the Hindus believe. So no animal would believe this, he says. It's only man who, in spite of being endowed with reason and imagination, could think of such an explanation. So this is what Huxley has been trying to say throughout the essay. Moving on. So I reflected, says Huxley, as I watched the sacred bull lick up the rice from the dozing beggar's bowl. While a million people undertake long journeys, suffer fatigue, hunger, and discomfort in order to perform in a certain stretch of dirty water certain antics for the benefit of a fixed star 90 million miles away, the bull goes about looking for food and fills its belly with what it can find. In this, it is obvious the bull's brainlessness causes it to act much more rationally than its masters. So what is it that Huxley says? Let us read this particular passage once again, students, because Huxley's argument, it turns upon this idea. So I reflected as I watched the sacred bull lick up the rice from the dozing beggar's bowl. While a million people undertake long journeys, suffer fatigue, hunger, and discomfort in order to perform in a certain stretch of dirty water certain antics for the benefit of a fixed star 90 million miles away, the bull goes about looking for food and fills its belly with what it can find. In this, it is obvious the bull's brainlessness causes it to act much more rationally than its masters. So, dozing means sleeping lightly, undertake means start or take on, stretch is an area or a section, antics refers to the activities or actions or behaviors. So after that, let us look at the passage once again. Huxley says that as he watched the sacred bull lick up the rice from the bowl of the beggar's bowl, he has certain reflections and he thinks about certain things. And what are those things? He has these thoughts where he wonders how it is possible that a million people take on these long journeys and they suffer fatigue, hunger, discomfort. They bear all these hardships for what? Only to perform certain rituals in a certain stretch of dirty water, he says. So he keeps referring to the river Ganga, which is dirty. He keeps referring to this part where the uncleanness of the the lack of cleanliness in the river Ganga. So he says that all these people, this million people, they travel long distances, they suffer many hardships, and they come here only to perform certain ritual gestures in a certain stretch of dirty water in order to benefit a fixed star. The sun is a star which is fixed and it is somewhere 90 million miles away. And they do all this for a totally purposeless, the whole action is totally purposeless. But then, says the writer, the bull goes about looking for food and it finds its food and then leaves. So he compares these two actions yet again. So in this, he says that it is obvious that the fact that the bull has no capacity to imagine or think, the very fact that the bull is brainless, has caused it to act much more rationally than its masters, than the men who are actually the men and women who are performing all those meaningless rituals. So the comparison is again underlined, it is emphasized in this passage. So Huxley keeps repeating this over and over again because he wants people to understand, and he wants wants this idea to be fixed in their minds that these rituals are meaningless. It is better for man to give up all kinds of superstitions and all kinds of meaningless ritual gestures and make use of those wonderful gifts that God has given us. Or maybe he wouldn't say God, those wonderful gifts that man has been gifted with, the man has been given, and those gifts are reason and imagination. And therefore, the comparison between the actions of the human beings or the men and women on the ghats and the bull in the streets of the town are compared during these the past three passages that we have read. So, if we analyze this passage, what we can see is that the event of the solar eclipse is the trigger for Huxley's reflections on the man versus animal debate in terms of rationality. The rituals performed by the people are denounced as being both irrational and a waste of energy and resources. So, the practical instinct of the animal, which makes it act more rationally than its masters, is hailed. So, this passage is very important because, as we have seen, the solar eclipse forms the launch pad or the trigger for Huxley's reflections. And so, there is this comparison between the rituals performed by the people and the practical instinct of the animal. So he says that this animal, or the practical instinct of the animal, is what makes it act more rationally, and this is much better, in fact, than the activities of the rational people who actually waste their energy and resources. So this passage is very, very important, students. And then this is the last passage of the essay. What is it that Huxley tells us here in this passage? To save the sun, he says, which might, one feels, very safely be left to look after itself, 1,000,000 of Hindus will assemble on the banks of the Ganges. How many, I wonder, would assemble to save India? An immense energy, which, if it could be turned into political channels, might liberate and transform the country, is wasted in the name of imbecile superstitions. Religion is a luxury which India, in its present condition, cannot possibly afford. India will never be free until the Hindus and Muslims are as rabidly enthusiastic about their religion as we are about the Church of England. If I were an Indian millionaire, I would leave all my money for the endowment of an atheist mission. So, what is it that he's saying here? Before we read that, or before we come to that, let us look at the difficult words in this passage. Immense means huge or vast. Channels is a reference to the passageways, a passageway or a means of access for a thing, a communication or an idea. Liberate means to free. Transform means to change. Rabidly means intensely, single-mindedly. Endowment is donation or gift. Atheist is a person who disbelieves or lacks belief in the existence of God or gods. So what is Huxley saying here, students? Please pay attention. This is very important. After the description of the people walking along the roads, the way they have faced all their troubles and hardships, and the description of the people on the three types of ghats, the description of the sacred bull in the town, and after all this, he comes to the crux of the essay, the main point that he's trying to make. And what is it? Let us see. To save the sun, and in parentheses, in brackets, he says, which might, one feels, very safely be left to look after itself. So once again, he's using his sarcasm where he says that the human beings do not need to save the sun, because the sun can very safely be left to look after itself. It is a star which is 90 million miles away, and it has absolutely nothing to do with these people who are performing all these rituals. So therefore, the whole ritual of trying to save the sun during the solar eclipse is totally meaningless, says the writer. So to save the sun, 1,000,000 of Hindus will assemble on the banks of the Ganges. So 1,000,000 of Hindus will come to the banks of the Ganges to save the sun. How many, I wonder, would assemble to save India? Would these million Hindus, or would these millions of Indians assemble to save the country? This is a question that he asks in the year 1926. So he says, an immense energy. The people of India, of course, there's a huge number. Even in those days, the population of India was a huge number. So he says, an immense energy, which, if it could be turned into political channels, if this energy could be turned into political channels, then what might happen? It might liberate and transform the country. It might free the country from British colonialism or British rule, and it might change the country. Instead, this immense energy that he's talking about, this immense energy is wasted in the name of imbecile or stupid superstitions, he says. What a total criminal waste of energy, he says. An immense energy, which, if it could be properly used, it could or it might free or transform the country. Instead, this immense energy is wasted in the name of imbecile superstitions, he says. And he also makes a very important point, students. Religion is a luxury which India, in its present condition, cannot possibly afford. So India cannot afford to, have this luxury called religion. Because what is more pressing is the fact that India has to gain her independence. India will never be free until the Hindus and Muslims are as rabidly enthusiastic about their religion as we are about the Church of England, he says. Here he's actually being ironical because most Englishmen are not enthusiastic about the religion. So he's actually using irony to talk about the enthusiasm of the English people towards their Church of England. So he's trying to say that India or the Hindus and Muslims in India should all come together and not be very enthusiastic about the religion. In fact, they should put religion aside and fight for the freedom of the country. And so finally, in the last sentence, he says, if I were an Indian millionaire, I would leave all my money for the endowment of an atheist mission. So he would totally leave religion and fight for his country. And that is what he says. If he had been an Indian millionaire, what would he have done? He would have left all his money for an atheist mission, because India does not need religion. India needs to have atheists, he says. The idea is not to say that atheists are the best people in the world. The idea is that religion is actually a luxury which India could not at that particular moment afford, because India needed to forget about religion and come together as Indians. All the Hindus and Muslims had to leave their religion and come together only as Indians and fight for the freedom of the country. So he ends the essay by saying that human beings can benefit if they make use of their reason and imagination instead of wasting their gifts by spending time and energy in ritualistic gestures. And so he's very categorical, he's very specific when he says that India does not need religion. India needs her people to become united. India needs her people to be rational and work towards her freedom. So with this, we come to the end of the essay, students. Let us see what it is that this particular passage is actually saying. The irrational behavior of the people who have gathered at the ghats to pray for the welfare of a star 90 million miles away is criticized. The immense energy of millions of people who could assemble to save India from the clutches of British colonialism, but instead is wasted in superstitions and rituals, is lamented. He feels sorry, he feels very bad about this. That all Indians, Hindus and Muslims, should give less importance to religion and channelize their energies towards the nation is urged. So these are the points that he makes in the last paragraph. So before we come to the end of the lesson, let us take a final recap. Benares by Aldous Huxley. The analysis can be actually divided into four questions, for which the answers would form the actual analysis of the essay. The first question is when. The essay was written in 1926 when Aldous Huxley visited Benares. The immediate context was the occurrence of a social eclipse. So please remember these points, students, when you have to discuss the essay. When was the essay written? The essay was written in 1926 when Aldous Huxley visited Benares. And the immediate context of the essay was the occurrence of a solar eclipse. Very good. Now, moving on to the next question, why? So why did Huxley write this essay? Huxley was a rationalist. He wanted to study the behavior of the people who would be offering prayers and performing religious rituals on the occasion of the solar eclipse. So Huxley was very interested in the behavior of the Hindus who would be praying and performing religious rituals just because they believed that the solar eclipse is actually the serpent Rahu devouring the sun, and they believed that they had to pray for the sun and that they had to help the sun god fight against the serpent. So this was a behavior which he found very interesting and he wanted to study it, and that is why he was there on that day in Benares. What? So what is the essay about? And what this is actually, in other words, the central argument in the essay. Huxley wants to persuade people to give up superstitions and irrationality in order to make full use of the gifts of reason and imagination. So let us read this again. The central argument in the essay is based on this point. What is it? Huxley wants to persuade people to give up superstitions and irrationality in order to make full use of the gifts of reason and imagination. So coming to the specific points, he presents a critique of mankind's irrationality through the essay. So this is a very important point, students, because he makes use of this occasion of the solar eclipse in order to present a critique of mankind's irrationality. The second point is that he also appeals to all Indians to give up superstitions and come together to save the nation. So the second point is that all Indians have to give up religion, a very rabid faith in religion, and they have to come together to save the nation, because the priority should be the freedom of the country rather than performing religious rituals. This brings us to the final question, which is how. So how does Huxley try to persuade his readers? How does he do it? Huxley provides examples to illustrate his central argument through the following. So there are two ways in which he does this. So what are the examples? The examples are the examples in which the behavior of the people on the ghats is shown. So you see how in there are three types of ghats that he visits. The first type is the bathing ghats, where the people assemble to bathe, to spit, to gargle, to drink water, and do all sorts of actions in the bathing ghats. Then there is the less crowded or less densely populated crowd, where the ghat where he sees a princess arrive, and he notices how rich and poor people, everybody is infected by religion. And the third type of ghats that he describes is the burning ghats. And the burning ghats are filled with corpses. And he describes these ghats to show how the river Ganga, accommodates every activity in its ambit. And then he moves on to the incident of the sacred bull in the town. And through this incident, he tries to show how animals, even though they are stupid and unimaginative, are in fact more rational than human beings who, despite being, despite having reason and imagination, commit enormous, very, very big mistakes in using these gifts for performing empty, meaningless ritualistic gestures. So this then brings us to the end of the lesson, students. In the final part, we have seen how, these four questions, the when, why, what, and how are answered. So very quickly, when the essay was written in 1926, when Aldous Huxley visited Benares, the immediate context was the occurrence of the solar eclipse. Why he writes this essay, or he has written this essay? Because Huxley was a rationalist and he wanted to study the behavior of the people who would be offering prayers and performing religious rituals on the occasion of the solar eclipse. So this brings us to the question, what? There is a central argument in the essay, and this argument states that, human beings or mankind should give up superstitions and irrationality in order to make full use of the gifts of reason and imagination. The specific points that we have come across are the critique that Huxley presents, the critique of mankind's irrationality, and his appeal to all Indians to give up superstitions and come together to save the nation. And how does he do it? What are the methods that he adopts? Huxley provides examples to illustrate his central argument through the description of the behavior of the people on the ghats and the narration of the incident of the sacred bull in the town. So I hope you understood the essay and enjoyed it, students. So that is all for today. Have a good day and goodbye. Thank you very much, students.